Hey, what's up guys? In this video we are going to be going over Yuhi's Zebra, or Yuhei. German viewers, please let me know which way to pronounce it. This is one of the more flexible and complex synths that you can get. It's very complicated for the new user, but once you get it, you have the ability to dive in and do some very unique things with sound design. And very popular. It's been around for, over 10 years, I believe. And version 2.8 is quite new to me still. And yeah, I'm just diving into it. And yeah, it was one of those ones that when I first got into producing electronic music seriously, everyone's like, you got to get this. This one can do it all. And I tried to use it and I was like, oh my God, what the heck's going on here? So it's kind of an intermediate to advanced way of going about it. You have to have a firm grasp of a lot of synthesis and routing, and you have to be able to kind of know what you're doing in order to navigate around it. But anyway, so this is the default view. You have synthesis, perform, and presets. I go into local and I always hit initialize just so we're on the same page here. And what this does is just has just one oscillator, oscillator 1 here. So this side is sound generation and oscillator effects, not sound effects like delay and reverb and phasing and stuff like that. This is the sound generation, wave folding, other effects, filters, things like that, shaping the sound. Over here, this area right here is the modulation, which would be envelopes, LFOs, things like that. And here is the routing. So it's kind of a modular digital hybrid kind of setup here. So our init sound is a saw wave. It's just oscillator 1, just the line going directly into one of the main kind of outputs. And you can do some bus routing as well. And you have your volume here. You also have pan, and then you can modulate the pan and the volume here. Pretty basic. So let's say we'll just do very not complicated, very simple routing here. So each one of these empty cells, I guess we'll call them, is a slot that you can insert anything really. So what we'll do is we'll just right click and we can insert a whole bunch of things. But we'll just insert a VCF1. So you kind of need to know what you're looking at here because it's easy to be like, what is all this stuff? I need my parents. You need to know what filters and FM stuff and combs and shapers and stuff like that. But we'll just start with a basic filter here. So we'll go filter 1. Super cool. So we have oscillator 1 going into filter 1. And here's oscillator 1. Here's filter 1, and we can select and it'll highlight what we're doing here. Boom, boom. So we have our oscillator going into our filter. We have a cutoff. Very cool. And we can move these around and things like that. And we can actually move them to other cells as well. But we want oscillator 1 going into filter 1. We can see a very simple signal path there. Diving into it more, we can have the filter 1 going into something else. My favorite thing to do is to have it insert into a distortion. So oscillator 1, filter 1, distortion. So I'll increase the output, or the input, which is the distortion amount. And I'll bring down the cutoff and increase the resonance. We can make some aggressive sounds that way. But let's say a typical synth, this would be kind of hardwired. So you'd have your oscillator section going into your filter, going into your distortion. And you can't really change them. In this one, you can. You can have distortion before the filter. Completely different sound, which is pretty dope in my opinion. So we're driving the filter. And, we're getting some really interesting sound design there. Very neat. So yeah, we'll just drag that back down there. And I'll just bring that down a little bit. So how does modulation work? So modulation works via these slots here. You can modulate These two will help modulate the cutoff, and then we have other modulations here, but let's just modulate the cutoff with LFO1. So LFO1 and envelope 1 are hardwired there. They're always available, but they only show up when you use them, so it's very context sensitive, which I'm a fan of. So let's just do that, and we'll find LFO1. That's right there. Boom. And we'll increase the mod depth amount. We can always see the mod depth amounts up there. And we'll do sync to 1 second. We can also sync it to BPM. I'll just do 1 second. We can adjust the rate as well. And this would be, how it works is it's a multiplier. So the rate is a multiplier of 1 second. So 100% of 1 second is 1 second. 200% of 1 second is half a second or something. Yeah, I don't know. And then 0% is basically it's not, the rate isn't happening at all. We also have the amplitude, which will control, I guess, the mod depth of everything that's attached to it. So we can do some complex things like have the LFO rate controlled by, let's just say, the other LFO. And we can do all sorts of stuff like that. I might want to have the mod depth up a little bit. And you can get some interesting things that way. I'll hit none, it goes away. Pretty cool. So these are, the modulation section of that sort of thing. Envelope 1 always controls the amplitude of the volume here. See, it's hard mapped there. We can also change it. We can have multiple envelopes affecting different kind of routing here. But let's get into more of a, I guess, a complex kind of routing. I want Oscillator 1 to go into 2 filters. So what I'll do is I'll right-click on this empty cell and then select VCF2. And then I'll right-click on the VCF2 and then say Input 1. And that will, if I move it up, Oscillator 1 will go into filter 2 and filter 1, and they're kind of independent. And this way I have parallel filter situations going on here, which is pretty cool. So I can kind of do this, and then I'll actually pan this channel 1 and 2. All right, and I'll have these share the same LFO, but I'll have them going in opposite directions. We can also change the tube distortion algorithm or type, and then post filter as well. But these are, each one of these kind of modules is, you can dive in and do some cool stuff. Like each filter, voltage controlled filter has different filter types, vintage and like MS-20, high pass, band pass, all sorts of things. And yeah, there's basic routing. And of course, we can have voltage control the filter 1 going into filter 2, which gives a completely different sound. Or we can have filter 2 being affected post filter 1. And just experiment with different routing there. And that's pretty cool in my opinion. So from there, let's just get rid of that. Oh yeah, so you can double click to disable a module or a cell. So it's still there, so you can audition what it sounds like with or without. I'll just remove those two. So I have these two here. And this gives us some really nice, I guess, stereo. It gives us a nice kind of stereo width. So let's go back to preset, hit initialize again, and kind of dive in more of kind of what we're looking at here. So the oscillator section is really neat. So it's wavetable based, vector based. So you have oscillator 1 here. We can have single, dual. So this is like unison, like in Silence 1. And then we can go to 11 and then detune. get really wide sounds, and this was, you know, the sound of the late 20 to like 2007 through, you know what I mean? Like it was one of those sounds, and it just sounded really thick and things like that. And that's the I guess classic detune. You have wave warp. So the wave forms are down here, and they're kind of interpolated. So we got pulse, and then square, and then like a bendy triangle saw thing, and then here's saw. Vibrato, which is pretty cool, and then the modulation options here for wave or tune, so we can have, you know, we were adventurous, we just go LFO1, which would give us like an interesting kind of flavor. The phase. Phase would be appropriate for stack, and we had reset, you know, those sort of things. Phase, we can adjust the phase of it with a modulation source. Pretty simple. And then we have like sync and sync tune. So you can do all sorts of stuff. So that's basic elementary oscillator stuff. Once we go into oscillator effects, this is really interesting, and this is what kind of blew me away as a young lad. We have all sorts of stuff. We have like fractals with a Z, and this basically shapes the oscillator. It affects the oscillator in really interesting ways, odd or even. So that's interesting. Scrambler. And that does all sorts of stuff. You got to dig into the manual. It can do all sorts of things. Phase transfer. All right, so think of the sound design possibilities with all of these effects that you can do. So you can take like a simple wavetable that you can actually draw in, and that way you kind of, you know, change some stuff around, and then you have different ways to adjust the effects here. And you can modulate them as well. So you can get really neat there, and then you can pan them within the module here. So, or do some volume stuff, or have width. So, and width sounds pretty cool. And that's really a thick sound, right? So that is the oscillator section. There's other ways you can go about it. So say you wanted to have a multi kind of channeled effect, I guess. You'd want oscillator 1 with some white noise. So I just right-clicked and created a new channel here. And we have independent color controls of the white noise. And let's have that kind of attached to a different envelope. You can attach that here to envelope 2. It'll automatically create the other envelope. You can get some really cool things with white noise and things like that. What else do we have here? You know what? You can just go all sorts of bananasness. You can merge things with mixing and stuff like that. So you can have oscillator 1 and noise mixed together, and you can have that going into, well, something that makes sense, you know, a filter. But it's still paralleled through oscillator, the channel 1 here. So we'll just bring that down. And yeah, we have all sorts of stuff here. We can mix it. So when you click on a cell, it will contextually have the module open, and we can even modulate the pan between them, which is pretty cool, and all sorts of stuff. And we can give it some drive. And do all sorts of stuff that way. Different combs, which are an interesting way of adding harmonics and things like that. You do all sorts of things with that. Envelope 2 is affecting both of those, so let's increase the decay. You can also, believe you can, no, you can't click on, anyway. And that is, you know, I don't want to get like too crazy with that, but yeah, we can have Oscillator 1 kind of bring that back in. And maybe have an effect there. Let's just see. We can have some ring modulation there. Or, I don't know, yeah, let's just do no sidechain. Why are you sidechaining? Never mind. See, it gets confusing for everyone. Let's say I want to, yeah, just distort that. And then maybe another filter. So if we can go just bananas here. And we can mix that. This would be envelope 1. And things like that. So down here, you have the ability to, you know, draw in and, you know, type in your waves. You have a bunch here. You can draw them in with the drawy kind of tool here, vector-based, I imagine. Your global has, you know, the usual suspects, pitch, glide, voices, your mode, polyphony, you know, duophonic, things like that. So you can get some really interesting things, microtuning. And then you have your effects here, which we will get into in a second. Don't worry about that. A whole bunch of other options. Arpeggiator and sequencer, XY controller, so you can have things attached to the Perform tab here, and your modulation matrix here, so you can have multiple values going to different targets, and that gets pretty, not confusing, but I don't know. It's just one of those things, really. So let's add in a reverb. So I did that by right-clicking the reverb here. So this is this slot right here, or this lane, I should say, up and down, is the main. So this is everything. We can also have, say, noise 1 go into bus 1, right? And then bus 1 will have a completely different thing. Here, more distortion. And then a separate kind of delay here. And then this will kind of do that. And we're getting like, you know, the weird kind of synthy stuff, but I don't care. I do what I want. And all those sort of things. And the module that you have selected will appear on the right here. And that's just basic Zebra stuff. There's a lot more that you can do. You can have just a whole bunch more of effects and move them around as much as you can, as much as you want, and try different things. And it's a different kind of workflow. And you don't need to be like, oh, I wish I could have distortion after the filter. Well, you just do that. It's like you don't even need to think about it. Or if you want like a distortion on the master, if you're crazy like me, you just, you know, maybe even just like, yeah, distortion or like a shaper. But yeah, distortion is pretty nice. make your sexy trance music or whatever you want to do. There, you know, it really works when it kind of inspires you. So let's say I want distortion, reverb. So filter, distortion, reverb. I have the filter down. And I'll adjust that sustain. Yeah, different layers and things like that. Anyway, I could probably do this for another half an hour. But yeah, that is Zebra by Yuhei. German viewers, I need your help. Anyway, hope you guys learned stuff. Hope you enjoyed. Take care and have a good one.